I've called this lecture Business Model Synthesis because I want to try something with you and hopefully you'll find it a useful exercise. What I want to do is to step by step combine the various models we've been discussing and to show you how, to a certain extent, they can fit together and complement each other. So what I've done is I'm taking each model as we find it. I'll just refresh your memory about the model, and then I'm going to show you step by step how you can layer them and integrate them to really add complexity to your strategic analysis. So if we start with the SWOT analysis, which is perhaps the simplest model, where essentially strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, so that's SWOT, and essentially the strengths and weaknesses on the left are internal, and the opportunities and threats on the right are external, and obviously in the middle you have the company. So that's very useful and it's a great starting point. But then we can start to think about Porter's 5 forces model for understanding competitive forces in an industry. So we have the 5 forces here on the same grid as the SWOT analysis, but on the left you have the power of suppliers and on the right you have power of customers, which are both, all these forces are external, but at the top you have the threat of new entrants to the industry and at the bottom the threat of substitute products, and in the middle you have competitive rivalry. Now what I've done is I've then looked to combine these with the original SWOT analysis, but I have rearranged the placement of the labels to reflect the SWOT analysis matrix. So you can see these are largely external factors. So we've got the power of customers and suppliers now on the right and the threat of new entrants and substitutes at the bottom. But these are all threats, and the competitive rivalry sort of stays in the middle because I think it also reflects the strengths, weaknesses and opportunities the business has. So I think you need to keep that there. But the other 4 factors are essentially evaluating threats to the company, which is why I've put them there. Next, we move on to the Lafley and Martin 5-step strategy model. And this is all focused about helping a company develop a competitive strategy. Now, I've placed these originally between strengths and opportunities, but let's have a look at the model. If you recall, the 5 questions are, devise your winning aspiration, decide where you're going to play, in other words, which market you're going to be in, how will we win? What's your strategy going to be? What's your unique competitive advantage? What capabilities do we need to execute the strategy? And then what management systems do we need to make sure we can follow through and make it happen? So I've taken this model, and as you see, I've put it at the top here. So it is crossing strengths and opportunities, but it does help you to think about the approach, taking your strengths and then converting it into an opportunity, which is to be competitive in the market. I move now on to the 5 C's model, which examines the environment in which a companies operate. Again, this one is primarily external. I'm going to switch to the model on the next slide and then we'll combine it in our synthesis model after that. Here's the model. You'll recall that the 5 factors are company, collaborators, customers, competitors and climate. And if we bring this into the model, the synthesis model, then we can see it's here. So it's really external and it's balancing between opportunities and threats, but it gives you more factors and more complexity to examine your SWOT analysis with. The PEST model also reviews external criteria, and it's extended by the PESTL model, which adds E and L for environmental and legal. So let's have a look at these two, and then what I'm going to do is bring in PESTL to our synthesis. So the PEST model is political, economic, technological and social, and then the PESTL model, extending that, adds environmental and legal. So if we bring it into our synthesis model, I placed it external and on the threat side, mostly because I want to keep the opportunities gap at the top free for the next model. But essentially, we're looking at the environment of the company and how it is affecting the organization of the business. So it's not really providing any opportunities, it's mostly creating restrictions and limitations on the business, which is why I put it at the bottom. The ANSOF matrix helps to devise growth strategies and understand their potential risk. Again, we'll have a look at the model and then I'm going to include it with the others. So here's the ANSOF matrix. You'll remember that we look at existing products and new products. And for existing products, we're looking at market penetration, which is basically growing market share, or market development, which is opening up new markets, but with existing products. With the new products, we can talk about product development, where we sell the new products to our existing market, or diversification, where we're taking new products into a new market. And you can see the risk arrows accordingly. So this is all about strategic growth opportunities, which is why I've put it up here. And you can see how it all now comes together to a certain extent. A lot of these models so far, as you can see, are predominantly external. But we're adding depth and complexity to our analysis, overlaying what was originally just a SWOT analysis. So most of the models have been external. So now I want to bring one that's going to rebalance that a little bit. And that's the value chain model, which is much more internally focused. So here's the value chain model, if you remember it. At the top, we have the support activities, the firm infrastructure, human resources, technology development and procurement, and then the primary activities of the business, inbound logistics, operations and outbound logistics, then marketing and sales, and then service. And these all help us to develop margin. So that's the model. I'm sure you remember it from our lecture. And if we put it on the left-hand side of our synthesis model, you can see that it's now really looking at the strengths and weaknesses of the business internally and helping us to optimize those. So we end up with a quite interesting, reasonably complex, and certainly from an MBA perspective, quite challenging model. It would take you quite a long time, I think, to work through these models and write them up for your business. But nonetheless, you can see how these all come together and how they can be used in combination very effectively. So to summarize, the synthesis model shows you how you can combine different business frameworks to add depth and complexity to your strategic analysis. Each model can be used on its own, but the real strength of these frameworks is layering them, as we have here diagrammatically, in order to give you that complex and sophisticated strategic analysis of your business. This is a slightly artificial exercise. I'm trying to use the diagrams to demonstrate how these models can be used in combination. The construct of my synthesis model is perhaps slightly artificial and possibly slightly simplistic. But in terms of communicating the point, which is you need to use these models in combination with each other to get the most out of them, I hope you'll find it a useful exercise.